It's great to speak with you today, Tim, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views today on the topic of lack of leadership and how good leadership leads to success. Before we start, can you provide a brief background of yourself?
Sure. As I said before, my name's Tim Donovan. I'm the founder of Advanced Innovation Managers, and I recently got into doing leadership training. And that's one of the things I feel is a shortage of leaders. But my background is I graduated from Non-Commissioned Officers Academy back in '75. I've had many different troops under my command during the time I was in the Army for 11 years. I've also been a leader at AT&T and Hewlett-Packard and some of the consulting work I did for them. So that's primarily my background.
Great. My first question is, well, where are the leaders?
Well, it's a good question, Dustin. And one of the problems is that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to learn to be a leader. And when you take a look at the world in general nowadays, it's not cool to be a Boy Scout, because the news is full of those now with the sex criminals and things like that, which there's some of them, but so nobody joins it. Many sports teams, especially in the younger ages, nobody wins. So it's pretty hard to be a leader when there's no winners. And a lot of the boys' clubs and stuff are not run by leaders. And the reason I talk about that is when I was 12 years old, I made my Eagle Scout, which less than 2% of the boys make, and I had to make decisions for a 55-person troop. You know, like where you camp, what exercise you're going to do. So you start young, and therefore you learn a lot about leadership at that point.
Well, why do we have a shortage of leaders?
Because people aren't joining those programs. People are going to a lot of the sports or the clubs where they don't have to be leaders. So you don't have that finite training, nor do you get the chance to have an example of what it means to be a true leader. So that's the main reason we have shortages, I feel, is you don't have the different clubs that many youth were part of in the 60s, nor do you have the number of people coming out of the military that you had back in the 60s and 70s.
And do you have some main ideas or the most important principles of leadership?
Yeah, when you look at the principles of leadership, and this is what I've noticed in corporate America, the first one is be technically and tactically proficient. Many times, if you talk to some of the management, they believe just by being put in a position of leadership, you automatically become a leader. But the person has no idea what they're leading. And, I mean, that's not uncommon to hire from the outside to get that. The other side of it is know yourself and seek self-improvement. And that's the second one I want to talk about, which is, you know, you really have to be honest with yourself and, you know, where am I weak? Where do I need to either have people that can help me or that I can go study and become better at? The other one, there's a lot of them, there's 9, is you need to set the example. And when you look in corporate America today, you don't see very many of them setting the example because a lot of the people in corporate America are looking to make their position known and then move on. So they really don't set an example of what needs to happen. What they do is they come into an organization, they grab what they can, get known for being good, and often before a project ever fails, they're gone. So they're really not setting very good examples. The other thing is ensure that the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. Too many people feel that just by telling somebody to do something, it's going to get done the way they want it. So again, you know, to be a good leader, you need to be able to do that. Another one I've seen drop in recent years has been train your people as a team. When I originally joined corporate America, I joined AT&T, we were required to get 40 to 80 hours a year of training. And it could be technical training or it could be leadership training, depending on what your position was. And I don't see that happening anymore because companies are cutting those budgets because of profits. The other thing I have seen in corporate America, and this one I guess, makes me mad is make sound and timely decisions. Many people just let things go until they become a crisis. They don't want people to understand what's actually going on. And the other thing is a lot of people tend to not develop a sense of responsibility in their subordinates. So people don't know what to do if not. And there's a lot of differences between the military and the business world. But if you look at like Colin Powell, he took military leadership to the nth degree and wrote a book to make it fit into the civilian side of the world. And that's another thing that happened in the Army. You're taught to lead, and you lead by example. The other thing would be that in the military, and a lot of people will say, well, military leadership is very easy because they have to do it or they go to jail. Well, that's a true situation, but the difference is when I lead a group in a combat, every one of them is a trained killer. Every one has a weapon, and either I'm looking out for their best interest, or if I'm not, they're going to get rid of you first. And that was called friendly fire if you go back to the Vietnam days and what's going on overseas. So, again, being a military leader is probably a little bit harder than being a civilian leader, and I hear a lot of times that it's the opposite effect. The other thing is just knowing your people, and that's a big thing that, I don't feel in corporate America we really know our teams. And so you don't know how to deploy the people so that they can use their strengths and train to their weaknesses. But that's kind of a summation of some of the principles of being a leader.
And do you have any final recommendations?
Sure. And couple of the biggest things that I found is, number one is you got to train your people. Too many people in corporate America feel if they train their people, they're going to take their place. And you need to give them an environment in which to grow, because a leader isn't born. I know there's been a lot of books written. Some people say a leader is born, but they're not really. They're trained. So they have to have that environment in corporate America. You got to allow people to be wrong, but when we talk about people being wrong in corporate America, we want to make sure that they had a sound decision for the reason they did what they did. And maybe it didn't turn out, and that happens. Because if you look at different companies like 3M, Apple, a lot of them had a lot of failures, even Microsoft, before they came out with a product that stuck. So you have to have that. And one of the things that I love, I found a quote from Tom Peters, who wrote a couple of the leadership books, and he said, our job is to create followers, is not to create followers, but to develop leaders. And that's what people forget is, too often people come into corporate America, climb the ladder, and like I say, I look around, they're gone before the project ever becomes due or the project's ever done. On paper, it's basically finished. So that's, I think, the big things we need to do in corporate America is provide that environment as well as, follow some of these principles. And there's also some traits which it just would take too long to go through them.
Well, thank you, Tim, for sharing today on your views on the topic of leadership. Did we cover everything you wanted to discuss?
At this point, there's a lot more to it. So keep in mind that this is just like the tip of the iceberg. Being a leader means a lot of extra work, means a lot of can be pain. But the bottom line is, if you don't create your future leaders, that's when companies will peak, and then they all of a sudden will crash when some of the leaders leave.
And thanks again for sharing.
Thank you.